Yeah, perfect. Sorry about that. So, yeah, we are. Yeah. So, developers favorite thing testing, and today we're going to see how the different testing strategies compare. And I'm going to talk about the one of the lesser known ones, which is mocking and the entire data inside the app itself. So, first we'll go through the normal one, which everyone would have gone through in their day-to-day development, which is like having a UAT server. So, you have a UAT server wherein you just ask the tester or someone to get all the data ready for testing a particular thing inside your application, and you would just give a user to you. You'll just run the app on your UAT server and probably test out that thing. The second way to do it is having something on a local machine wherein you can just have a mock server kind of a thing. Every developer can run it for himself, and it's slightly more difficult, but it's still doable across both Android and iOS. So they can run their own thing and once again test everything that their app needs. The third one is the one that we are going to talk about today, and which is like mocking data inside the application. So this is a very lesser known strategy because nobody does it that way. The reason why I had done it in the past is they were developing their entire an entire banking application from scratch, and what the they had lots of native engineers in their team, because of which they decided to go this route. And I'll just show you a quick video on what that looks like. So this was the banking application, and what you see here is a savings bank account wherein, sorry, this is very acting weird, wherein you have a savings goal. So let's say you are trying to save $6,000 in 6 months or something. So what you see right here is a bank account, and you see something called as a savings goal, which is supposed to start in 4 days. And we're trying to mock this particular feature of the application here. If I go ahead and just go a little bit ahead, I'll open developer settings, which would just be available on debug mode. I'll change something so that I want to change the behavior of the UI, right? And once I do that, I come back to that save account once again, and I see a completely different UI which was not available earlier. So earlier it said my savings goal is supposed to start in like 4 days, and now it's showing me a UI which is like having the data, like the savings goal has already started, and I'm on week 2 and week 3 and stuff like that. And all I did was I went to the settings, I changed that particular drop down to show that particular savings goal, and I went ahead. So similarly, I just changed it once again to show a different state of the UI, and the entire thing is all cached inside the application, and you don't rely on a UAT or a local server to fetch that data for you. So that is basically what we are trying to do. And the way it's done is you have your application. It just tells you make an API call to fetch the current savings goal or anything. You have various states which would be unstarted or different states of the application that might be very specific to your use case. And then you might have, you just basically, whenever the app makes an API call, you just select what state you want to test. And depending on what you have selected, the app would just run that particular mocked mode inside the application. So that's all the slides that I have. I'll just quickly show you how that runs in code. And for that, this entire thing was done in Android from my team. However, it's also done on iOS. So whatever I'm saying right now or I'm speaking about right now, it can be done on iOS as well. I'll just So yeah, so we have our normal retrofit wherein you specify the basic endpoints of your application, and uh, what we saw was basically this: an API call to fetch all the goals that the user might have. You have your retrofit instance where you say, okay, these are the endpoints that I want to use. You specify the base URL, and you get the OK HTTP client configuration and stuff like that. Now, retrofit also has another library dependency called as mock retrofit, which can be used to mock anything that you have inside your application and basically whatever you saw in the previous slide. So you just get that dependency as a debug dependency so that your production version of your application doesn't have the mock responses and stuff like that. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to specify a mock behavior wherein you can say, hey, let my mock API return something with a delay of just 200 milliseconds. It can fail every XYZ amount of times. Basically, you just specify a percentage and you'll be able to mock not just the different API states, but also your different failure percentages and stuff like that. So you do that, and with the endpoints, you have to specify mock endpoints as well. So the way it works is for the goals, you just define an enum which would have all the different types of goals that we just mentioned. In our case, we saw unstarted, started, and we saw the completed state. So you'll specify different types of goals, and you'll just read response from a JSON file, which might be just there in your Android local directory. So you don't go to any, you don't rely on any backend and stuff. You just read the response from a JSON file, and then you just decode it and get it back. Once that is done, it's pretty straightforward. Now all you have to do is just play with this particular enum. So the dialog that we saw regarding the drop down basically is nothing but doing nothing but having this particular mock response, and it gets just fetches all the enums which you have inside this one. And depending on what you have selected, it would just return a particular response back to the application. So that's basically it. I don't want to go inside how it's done because it's all generics and just pure reflection in Kotlin. And yeah, that's basically my talk in general. It was really short.
Okay, that's fine. Any questions?
Yeah. So you're running it when you upload it to store as well?
No. So because you don't include that mock dependency in your production version, you just do it on your debug version.
Okay.
So all your even all the JSON files that we saw here, they're all just on your debug version of your application. So it's never on the production. So you don't have to worry about all that data which is not related to the production version.
Have you guys had any problem?
Yeah.
People uploading that?
Sorry?
Have you guys had any problem of like people uploading that to the production branch?
No, it won't because it's a different source set, right? So
Okay.
you have your production version and then you have your debug version. So
Okay.
you might think of it as having the code base in different branches.
Yeah.
So one of them just has a little bit extra, which one might not. Yeah. Anything else?
Did you find that this approach was a big improvement for your team, like versus the other approaches you mentioned at the beginning?
So I joined this team pretty late down the line. The reason why I was told that this approach was taken like I prefer the first two approaches as well. However, they were building a bank, and that bank was just like everything was greenfield, right? So they had lots of developers, and they had lots of developers on the native side as well. So rather than building a UAT server or something, and because their APIs were built in parallel with the app as well, they decided to go this way.
Which bank was it?
That was Volt Bank.
Sorry, what?
Volt, VOLT. Yeah. So it started during COVID and then it crashed during COVID. So
I know that one of the guys who ran the multiple digital team that used to be that leadership.
yeah. So like I said, it started and crashed during COVID. So it was live for the entire public for a very short time.
They got quiet.
No, so I used to work for Frollo, whose major client was Volt. Frollo got acquired, but Volt just crashed. Yeah. So they had to return their banking license and then just give it up.
Yeah. So it's my company's heavily involved at ANZ Plus,
Oh, okay.
We use a very similar mechanism for mocking the data. Basically, there's a local. It's all local to the app. It doesn't use JSON files, but it's all self-contained. It lets you do things like switch between different sort of feature flags and different features and things, and run all the UI tests and things against that without having to sort of.
So like it doesn't have to be JSON files. It can be just anything based on what your user. Like I know Telstar did it a slightly different way. So they had something very similar to this, but what they did was they had a separate Git module inside their repo, and they used to have all the files. So although everything was running locally, they still had a local server wherein they would push new API calls and stuff like that. So yeah, many people are doing it in different ways.